Hey everyone, and welcome to Bright and Early, the podcast for people building early stage startups. I'm your host, Brian Ray. I talk to entrepreneurs, product people, designers, and marketing pros to learn what works, what doesn't, and why, giving you at least one thing to apply to your business first thing tomorrow. My guest today is Sofia Quintero. Sofia is the founder of EnjoyHQ, a tool that helps teams keep all their research data in one place. She was previously head of growth at Gecko Board, as well as a Techstars mentor. Sofia, welcome to Bright and Early.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you on. I believe it was Ali Blum from, I don't know what episode number, somewhere around episode number 8 to 11-ish, I want to say. And she mentioned EnjoyHQ back then. And so you've been on my radar for a little bit. So it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Excellent. Ali's always super helpful. Yeah, I actually had a chat very recently with her. It's always, she has so much energy. It's just excellent.
Yeah, she seems super, super nice. So for listeners who aren't familiar with EnjoyHQ, can you just give us the 2-minute pitch? Like, what is it? What does it do?
Sure. So we are a customer research platform. We help product teams and UX teams to centralize customer feedback and user research data, to develop research projects, and to share insights with the entire organization. So we are a UX research repository for medium to large size organizations. And it's all about democratizing insights within the business, especially product insights coming from user research.
Okay. So you mentioned, it's like meant to be a central repository for what is usually qualitative research data. Is that fair summary?
Yeah, that's correct. Although more and more customers are bringing other type of data like behavioral data, customer events and properties into the platform, so they can do better segmentation of what they already have and enrich also their user profiles or perhaps their segmentation, personas, and so on. So it is evolving quite rapidly. Initially, it is mostly used for centralizing qualitative information or data, but then now it's just also evolving into bringing other type of data into the platform.
Okay. When did you found the company? When did you start?
We started in 2015, but we launched publicly in late 2016.
Okay.
And it's been a long, long ride, man. It's just only 4 years feels like 10.
No, I can completely relate to that. I'm sure most of the listeners can as well. Where'd the idea for EnjoyHQ originate for you? When was the first thought that there needs to be a product that does this?
Sure. It was essentially my previous job at Gecko Board. Gecko Board is a data analytics dashboard, a little bit like EnjoyHQ. It centralizes, but in this case, metrics. It's a dashboard. You can see all your metrics. And we focus a lot on helping customers at the time to be very data driven and focus on the numbers and how you can react and understand data over time and improve your decision making in the business. And as I was working there, we focused a lot on that, but I personally was the head of growth, and I was trying to connect the product team and acquisition and retention and all that stuff together. And what I noticed is that we were excellent at being data-driven and numbers, but we didn't necessarily have a good structural process to collaborate when it came to customer research in user research, or even having access to customer feedback coming from multiple sources. Like, there is not a company in the world that can say that they don't have multiple channels. Like, customers are talking to you the way they feel comfortable, and therefore you have this new problem in the organization where you have a ton of channels, people are producing a bunch of data, and it just becomes really hard to collaborate. When I was there, I tried to solve that problem in different ways, and I will say I failed at it. And what I wanted to do was start thinking about that problem a little bit differently. And I met my co-founder at Gecko Board as well. He was one of the first engineers there. And we started thinking about this. And it didn't really trigger just because I was working at Gecko Board and I had that challenge. I've been seeing this problem over and over again. I'm being lucky that I had the opportunity to work in different industries and very different roles, customer experience, change management, just a ton of different areas, advertising and large agencies. I did a bunch of different stuff. And what I noticed is that in every single team that I joined will have a slightly, kind of similar problem where it was difficult for them to know, what do we know about customers? What is that research? Who has done research? Who is interviewing people? What are the metrics? Can we just see that stuff all together and kind of connect the dots? It was always a problem. So when I was at Gecko Board, I felt like, like I've seen this enough, there must be a way to change it. And that's how I started thinking about it. Mostly, it was just like weekends and evenings thinking about this specific problem and other things that I was interested in. I knew that I wanted to start a company anyway. So I felt like this was something that I was passionate enough, that I really care about, enough to just actually do it and try something here.
Mm-hmm. You said in there along the way that at Gecko Board you were trying to solve this problem and you failed. Why do you say you failed when you were there?
I think just different things. It was hard to do the job and at the same time build some sort of internal tool that will connect the tools that we were already using to gather customer feedback, plus a way of connecting that with Google Drive and whatever we were using for research notes and the survey tool and the customer support and this and this and that and user testing sessions. Like, a lot of these things were in spreadsheets, like most teams today. Like they will use, Airtable or spreadsheets to put a bunch of information in a way that they believe is that the most centralized way possible. But the reality is that you need so much more than that. You need ways of searching across things, of visualizing things, and being able to bring different type of data together. So it was complicated. So we had a process, and when we actually did something about that problem at the time, but it wasn't good enough to really create that collaboration between different departments. Because one thing, as a marketeer, my background as well is just growth and acquisition and so on. You always gonna have the challenge of like, how can we create processes that help us learn from customers faster and have a better understanding across the board. And marketing teams always focus on doing a bunch of research, but then it's just most of the time very disconnected from the research process that product teams, execute. Multiple teams researching, but not necessarily having the same understanding of their processes and how they use the data or how to share those insights together. So I would say that's why I failed, because there's a lot of things involved into creating that collaboration, and it was difficult with a spreadsheet.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the other thing about EnjoyHQ is that it strikes me as the sort of project where things could get really meta really fast. Like, were you able to use EnjoyHQ itself in the early days of EnjoyHQ, or as it was being built, were you using like some inelegant system of hacked together tools that you wanted to replace?
Yeah. So the first thing that we did, like the MVP, if you like, was more like a search, purely a search functionality. So we will build, because of our background, my co-founder and my background was around like building data products. Coming from Gecko Board, we thought about it from an integration perspective. So the first thing that we built was this sort of search box where you can connect a bunch of integrations. We made sure that the integrations were very, very deep, that we were able to bring, not only the conversations that customers were having with the company, but also like customer segmentation data, being able to update that at kind of almost real time. So we wanted to just create this kind of Google search box where you could just go through all your support tickets, all your survey responses, all your emails, and so on. That was the initial thing that we did. So we were able to use that. Because we were using our self-intercom for managing the beta program and so on. So that was fine. But then, the first roadblock is, okay, I have all that data in one place. How we're going to analyze this differently, how we're going to just, create our workflow. So we didn't have that. And that was exactly the same feedback that we got for everybody that was using the product. Like, okay, this is fine, but, I need more. So as we were evolving the product, we were evolving the way we ourselves were using it, and the pain points that we were experiencing in comparison to the pain points of the companies that were experiencing the product too. So we used it from the very beginning, and we felt all the different problems that our customers were experiencing. Now it's slightly different though. Now our customers tend to be a lot larger than we are, and so now we have to kind of use our own workflow and use our own product, but try to transpolate that into what also is the experience for a team that has 10 user researchers when we don't have even one. So just now it just changed the process, but we still use, of course, our own tool to do that. And now we have the workflows that we need to do it. But it took a while. We evolved with our customers.
Yeah. How large is your team right now?
We are 7 people full time, and we have a couple of contractor friends that work with us.
Sure. So that's pretty interesting then, that that you're using your own tool, eating your own dog food, as they say. But your team and your needs are, as you mentioned, they're drastically different from some of your larger customers. How do you resolve that tension, or how do you strike that balance between knowing what the product needs from your own perspective, and balancing against different needs of customers of a different size?
Sure. So at the core, we, as a small company, we do research the same way. A solo researcher will do research anyway. So it will be kind of the same use case. When it gets complicated is when you have organizations that have like very established, large, product teams with 25 designers, 10 researchers, 60 product managers. When you have that level of infrastructure, the major changes are around how things are communicating, like collaboration between multiple team members. Then you have a bunch of things related to security and governance and user sort of permissions, and there is a ton of other elements that have to do with how each of these team members talk to each other, how the scale of the volume of data, the number of documents that they're managed, and so on. And the way we understand those requirements, if you like, it's just by talking to people, like very basic. I'm on calls, and my team are on calls all the time, and the whole spectrum from the demos that we do all the way to talking to customers, for the new features that we're going to launch, for the things that we don't know we have, the people that churn, we talk to them. We just talk and show like prototypes and ask for feedback and begging for feedback, and just like whatever we can do to get an insight into how people work. And as we continue that process, we kind of make friends with our customers too. So we have a group of customers in different organizations in different sizes that are very close to what we do, and they've been with us for a long time. So we've been able to go even deeper and go and visit them and stay longer and see how the product evolved with them. Because I think something that we've been very lucky is that once a customer start implementing processes around user research and establishing a better way of doing customer research in general, that evolves all the time. You start very small, and then the thing gets like very quickly complicated, and you evolve your thinking about what that should look like in your team. So we've been able to see that over like years now. We have customers that stay with us, almost since the beginning. So it's just fascinating how that evolved in large organizations, and we have the privilege, if you like, to be able to have those conversations and really see that evolution happens. But quite honestly, it's all about like talking to customers all the time, and we use tools like Full Story, and I love watching the sessions, and I love the user testing sessions and so on. But just the conversations and ongoing conversations, you cannot replace that.
No doubt. The earliest MVP of EnjoyHQ, you mentioned it had you created some integrations, enabled some integrations, and made those searchable. Did you how did you decide on those first integrations? Was that entirely the tools that you all were using, so you started there, or did you do a little bit of initial user research to see who your target customers would be? How did you decide upon and define that initial MVP?
It was, well, partly the tools that we were already using because we were familiar with them, but we basically look at the most common tools that people use to communicate with customers and the ones that were more popular at the time. They actually they still are. So we did make that list. Okay, for customer support, let's do intercom and let's do Zendesk, and for sales is Salesforce, and for like service is these two ones. And so we kind of understood, well, if we're going to go with few integrations, can we get at least one or two per category, and then see how that goes. And so we launched initially, I think it was like 5 integrations, trying to cover the highest volume kind of channels.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did you get your very first batch of customers?
It was mostly initially by me just saying I'm building something. So I got people there. I talked to what I was in Gecko board in previous jobs. You start building your network, and initially it was very simple as just doing that. And we started building this list before the launch. We were very lucky also to join Techstars program in London, and that helped a ton because they have this massive network. And you can expose what you're doing very easily. So that was a first cohort of people that came through, I guess, like the Techstars network, and also by all the advertising that they do when the back of the companies are there.
Yeah, no doubt. Were you charging from day one to those earliest customers, or was it?
Not at all. We actually we went through Techstars. We finished the program in October, and then it was November, the following month or so, that we actually launched, and then we started charging. We tried to charge a couple of beta customers, something like $99 at the time, but there were just a few that pay, and we just were so much focused on just letting it out. We were building this for a while, and we were like, okay, cool, we have some customers, there's some signal that they're going to pay for this, and some of them pay. We just were desperate to get it out. We just felt like enough, like we have something here that we can start evolving fast. And so we did that. If I could go back, I probably will stay a little longer beta, but that's not what we did.
Okay, you would stay in beta for a little bit longer if you could go back? Why is that? Why do you say that?
I think we could have redefined the initial pricing a bit more. We could have probably established a group with larger companies. As any startup, you most likely you normally get small companies at the beginning too. So that skews a little bit where you go with the product. And as you evolve and you start realizing, well, actually my customers are larger companies, it would have been better to stay a little longer. But it's as usual, I'm saying all that stuff, but how on earth I will figure it out without going through it. So I have no idea. But if I could magically go back with what I know today, I definitely would stay longer.
Yeah, no, of course. With the benefit of hindsight,
totally.
you could always change it. So was getting your pricing right a challenge that you had to face in the early days? Have you changed your pricing model in the history?
Oh, many times. We changed so many times. I think we went very radical with it a couple of times, and I think at the beginning it's super scary to do that. But then
to change pricing feels
absolutely it's super scary to change pricing. Especially with the first cohort of customers, and we always grandfather, but then as we continue to do that, we wanted, and then as the companies were changing and the type of customers that we were getting traction with was changing, we were like, oh my God, what is the pricing? And we did some crazy things. At some point we just said, this is $500 and that's it. And we didn't have enough features or anything. We just said, like, will people pay for this? And then before it was like $99, and then we changed 3 tiers, and then we changed by numbers integrations, and then we changed back to not having number of integrations. We have done several experiments around pricing, and the one that we have today, I feel that still not perfect, but I feel that it's definitely the best so far. At least the one that I feel that people have the least friction. So it's been a ton of experiments around that, and we always grandfather, but it's always like super scary to go and say we're going to change pricing radically, and we do.
Okay, and how did you arrive at the experiments that you've run? Just through trial and error, or is there some resource that you would recommend listeners who are wringing their hands over this very problem, as so many SaaS founders are wringing their hands over pricing? What
Oh
have you
God.
what have you found helpful?
So I try different things. So I try Price Intelligently or Profit Well, guys. They have
Yes.
this sort of very nice blog post around this survey where you kind of you ask people, what is too expensive, what is too cheap, and so on. I'm going to kill completely the blog post by describing it this way. I'm not sure. We will have to find the link and share it in the notes.
I sure will.
But yeah, so they have this kind of methodology and it's based on a survey, and then you get data. So we did that at some point, and that was kind of helpful, but it didn't really kind of work in the long term. People were still giving us like, feedback. Oh, this is way too expensive, or oh no, why don't you charge by this or charge by the other stuff? And it's just difficult. We just kept getting feedback, and just ton of feedback around pricing all the time. Every time we did an experiment, we would get, of course, people angry, people that were fine, people that didn't care. But our goal was always to understand, will people pay more for this? Are we delivering enough value for people to feel comfortable with the fact that we're charging this much? That was all we wanted to understand. And then what we're actually delivers, what people appreciated from the app, what was the actually core value that they will pay for. And we still struggle with this idea of the value metric, right? Where you have this only metric or thing that you charge for that is, scales as your customers use you more. And I think for products like ours that are about centralizing data, it is a complicated thing to get to. And we tried so many things, but I think that resource from Price Intelligently, surveys that we ran, doing interviews, anybody that complained about pricing, we beg them to get on a call with us.
Yeah.
That's how we redefine our thinking.
Yeah, that is interesting because just off the top of my head here, your value metrics could be either like number of integrations that you're metering, or objects that you're importing from any of those integrations, number of team members that are able to log in. What are the value metrics that you've tinkered
Yeah.
around with or tried to drill in on?
Well, this is still like a puzzle. So if you think about integrations in particular, just because, so the premise will be, okay, well, if we have a lot of integrations, if our team is connecting a bunch of sources, I will get a ton of value for having all that data in one place. That sounds very logical, but it's not. The fact that you have a ton of data on each channel doesn't mean that you have a ton of insights there.
Okay. Yep.
So that's the first thing. The volume doesn't necessarily correlate to insights. So the value comes from the generation of insights. So having all the data in one place definitely give you, speed. They give you visibilities, a bunch of benefits from it.
Yep.
But it doesn't correlate with insights, which is ultimately what you want to generate and what is valuable and what it gets shared. So there are teams that, for example, they will use only one integration and they get a ton of value from that, and they don't feel that they have to add other integrations because they're mostly doing like customer interviews and long form feedback, sort of like long form qualitative sort of reports and so on. So, there are teams that are very heavy in integrations, and that's all that it matters to them. So when we started looking at whether or not charging based on the number of integrations, it does help for sure, but it's not necessarily a value metric. Just because you have more integrations doesn't mean the platform becomes more valuable necessarily. It feels very logical, but we discovered over time that it is not. It is not like we are not segment.com. We are not that type of tool where that principle applies very nice and clearly. When it comes to qualitative information, is slightly different, the perception of value in terms of when you have more connections or volume for users as well. So again, like, who does research in the company? That's not everybody in the company, but your team wants everybody in the company to be able to access that. So if you charge heavily per user, you are actually going against who we are as a company, which is we want to enable you and help you to share those insights easily so everybody can benefit from. So it's kind of finding a good model where some users can help, can have the power of use the platform, but then other users can have the power of accessing those insights. Otherwise, imagine if you charge per user and you have a 10,000 company employee company that is just going to be unsustainable for a small research team to pay. So it is challenging. It's not as clear as it seems. In paper sounds good, but once you implement those changes, you realize there's a lot of friction around, what actually means value to people and what is useful or not.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Patrick Campbell of Profit Will is coming on the show in early November, so I'm looking forward to to digging in, even more
Sure.
on those ideas. So thanks for what you shared there. Sophia, you have a incredibly inspiring and just incredible generally like backstory. Personally, 10 years ago, you were like basically a penniless political refugee in London, and today you are the CEO of your own company. So would you just tell us your story there and some lessons that you've picked up along the way?
Sure. So I'm Venezuelan. Well, we are on the news sometimes, not for the right reasons. Venezuela is going through this crisis, and it's been going through the crisis for the last 20 years. We have this dictatorship going on for a while, and just the country fell apart. When I left Venezuela in 2006.
Okay.
And I left because I was feeling like nervous and insecure there. I felt like any given point when you go on the streets, you're just gonna go, to work or go to the gym. You can you can be robbed or killed at any given time. It's just a really awful situation. Even if you are in a nice sort of area and so on, it's actually worse. So I felt like, first of all, I wanted to feel safe, and second, I didn't see a future there. And I love Venezuela and love my country, and it's definitely in 2006 wasn't even close to how badly, like how terrible the situation is today. But at the time, I felt, okay, I need to find my way. And as I was doing that, like most of my friends now, all of my friends and family have left the country. It became unbearable, and I left in 2006 to England, mostly because a friend of mine was already there, and I just in my mind said, okay, let me just go a year, 2 years to learn English, because I didn't speak English at all. To learn English, well, just I spoke like a little bit, like school English, like, hi, my name is Sofia.
Yes.
Right. So I left, and I thought, okay, well, I'm gonna spend a year or two there learning English and trying to like just escape this crazy thing for a minute, and then if everything gets better, I will go back. And of course, things didn't get better. So I decided to stay there and do whatever I could to stay there legally and rebuild my life and start from scratch, but at least with the hope that things will work out a little bit better. And the interesting thing about arriving to a country from scratch that way is that if you don't speak the language, you're not in a good position. So I had to get like whatever job I could get. I had to like clean toilets and go to Starbucks and work in Subway and just do whatever I could to just get my feet on the ground and learn quickly. Then I was lucky then to later being able to do a master's degrees and continue like working and change like my status to high skilled immigrant and go through the process of reincorporating myself into the industry. But I had to spend a couple of years just trying to understand how to survive there. I didn't have anybody, from my family. Everybody left to a different country as well at the time. So we were all separated, and I didn't have, a ton of money. Actually, I borrowed some money from a friend to go to England. So it was long and it was hard, but I think it's just a typical story of anybody that migrated and in those conditions. And then that was it. So generally speaking, I'm just so happy that I moved there. I felt like that was a good place to kind of reinvent myself, if you like, to make different choices around career and the things that I care about. Back home in Venezuela, I was like a middle class, and I was just doing, I was always entrepreneurial. I had a skateboard shop, I had a magazine, I had like, a bunch of things. So I was always entrepreneurial, but at some point the country just like couldn't, I couldn't do anything else there, and it was super sad. Like it was just awful. Yeah. So I left. But the funny thing when I tell this story is that I talk to all my friends that are, successfully, doing whatever they want to do in terms of careers and so on, that they left as well, and they tell me like, Sofia, why are you talking? I'm also amazing. I did the same. Like there's a ton of immigrants, that have the same story. That it's a interesting story, but it's just so common as well.
Well, thanks for sharing all of that. That must have been an incredibly difficult decision to make, to leave
Yeah.
Venezuela. How long did you wrestle with that decision before you finally had to come to the conclusion that you needed to leave?
Yeah. Oh my God. I think a couple of years,
Yeah.
and it was like, God, the last year when I fully decided, okay, this is it, is that, I got robbed in the middle of, I was going to the gym actually, and I got robbed with a gun,
Mm.
by this little kid. He was like 12 years old, and you can see that he was just like hungry. Maybe somebody sent him like to do that. It was a kid, but he had this massive gun, and I was like, oh shit. So I was just asking for like my earrings and so on. But that happened to me many times before in different scenarios. And I was like, how long, how many times does this have to happen to me, for me to decide what to do? And I was so lucky to be able to leave. There's so many people that are still, I will say, trapped there and in horrible conditions. So, I thought about it for a while, but it's difficult because it's just such a beautiful country, perfect weather, amazing people, great resources. It's just like, governments and dictatorship. What are you going to do?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing for sharing that part of your story, and for everything that you shared today about Enjoy HQ and lessons you've learned along the way. Sophia, where can listeners find and follow you online?
Sure. So to learn more about EnjoyHQ, you can go to getenjoyhq.com. Twitter is Sophia QT, Sophia with F, Q for Queen, and T for Tower. And that's it, I think.
Wonderful. My guest today has been Sofia Quintero. Sophia, thanks so much for being my guest today.
Thank you.
All right, listeners, let's do some closing thoughts here. I always love listening to the origin story of ideas, and they're particularly fascinating to me when it's somebody who is currently, executing on an existing process with a bunch of hacked together tools, docs, spreadsheets, Airtable, whatever. Because I guess Airtable does start to kind of what's the right word? Span several use cases of spreadsheets, of course. But at any rate, when multiple tools are being pulled together for one workflow, I always find it fascinating when somebody takes a look at that and says, "Oh, there's an even better way to do this. The existing process, functional though it may be, is not quite good enough." And so that's certainly what Sophia and EnjoyHQ are trying to do. By not by creating a brand new tool that says, hey, quit using Google Docs, quit using Airtable, quit using spreadsheets, quit using whatever else it is you're using. We're going to sit on top of the entire workflow, create integrations that pull all of that data in, add some additional functionality, some additional, piece of value, global search, or however Enjoy surfaces insights, makes observations, adds some piece of value that sits on top and across the existing workflow. I just think that's pretty fascinating. As I was listening back to this and thinking about it, it did remind me. I tried to find the original quote, and I can't find. If you know, hit me up. But the original quote is basically, all business models are basically bundling and unbundling, and so you're effectively your business model is to either do one thing extremely well and do it better than anything else and not try to do anything other than that, or it's to look at look at an existing workflow and all the things that are hacked together, and then bundle that up into one place so that you can get the entire job done in one place and in one way. And there's an interesting thing, and I'm still just like, rolling this around in my head. There's an interesting thing, I think, that seems to be going on right now in software, where through integrations, data integrations, there's like another business model that kind of seems to sit on top of that says we're not going to try to bundle all of these things together and do them all good enough so that you just get it done in one place. We're also not going to try to do any one of them any better than your existing solution. We just want to sit on top of your workflow and offer some value there. So like I said, I'm still kind of rolling that around in my head and trying to understand, conceptually that's actually bundling. That's a bundling model. So yeah, I'm curious if you have thoughts on that. If you've heard that quote before, and given that some thought, let me know what you think. There was a similar conversation in this Slack group that I'm a part of, and somebody was saying, Typeform is a great survey app. Amplitude is a great event tracking app. Intercom is a great chatting and event messaging app. Why are there not more apps that have all three of these features? And so, my gut reaction was, it's a full-time job to be a great survey app. It's a full-time job to be a great event messaging app. And so, the answer is, yeah, you could do all three of those. You're going to do every single one of them less, effectively, less well than any of those solutions that were just listed. So, but sometimes that's good enough. The the business that you might want to build would be to bundle those three together, do every single one of them less beautifully than Typeform, Amplitude, or Intercom, and maybe that's good enough. So super interesting that they got off the ground with just a couple, with a few integrations that covered a large percentage of workflows, use cases. They're up to, I think, a couple dozen integrations now when I was looking. So that's fascinating. And I would love to have been able to dig in a little bit more on the idea of when Sofia was saying she wished they would have stayed in beta a little bit longer to figure out pricing. Although, it's the direction the conversation went was, if they had stayed in beta longer, then they would not have been forced to figure those things out, and who knows what other issues they would have been dealing with. But pricing certainly seems to be one that I'm always pushing for. Just ship it, just get it out there. You gotta ship while you're embarrassed, ship before you're comfortable. You got to get it out there and see if anybody actually wants the thing that you're pushing. And the only way, or the thing that you're selling, the only way to do that is to actually do it. Pricing feels like it might be one of those areas where, it does make sense to kind of sit a little bit longer than maybe I would want to, because it does get so complicated and is so difficult. It seems to figure out and tweaking and changing it as you go. Pricing is not the same thing as copy on the homepage or a specific interaction on some piece of the app that might be a little bit buggy. It's pretty core. So I certainly know people do it all the time, change their pricing and tweak the business model. But goodness, it just seems like such a hairy thing. And so the price sensitivity model that she referred to, I will link to it in the show notes. Price Intelligently does have a good post on this. There's a good Wikipedia entry on it, and if you want to just Google for it, it is Van Westerndorp's price sensitivity meter. I believe that he's a Dutch economist. So Van, VAN space Westerndorp, Westendorp. So I will link to those things in the show notes. And I guess finally, it's just I was grateful for Sofia to share her personal story. I mean, my goodness, I have nothing to add to that other than it just is a good reminder to me personally to practice gratitude at all times. It's just such an incredible, inspirational story for what she has overcome. And so something that just keeps popping up on my radar is how simple the practice of naming 3 things that you are grateful for on a daily basis over time just increases levels of happiness better than any sort of acquisition of more things ever possibly could. So in that spirit, the 3 things just off the top of my head as I was jotting notes here that I am grateful for: board games. My wife and I learned how to play Rivals for Catan just last night. We've been fans of the original game for a long time and recently got the 2-player version. So I am just grateful in general for board games. They bring me so much enjoyment, and I'm grateful for them. I'm grateful for my body still working. I turned 40 in January, and in November I'm doing a 1-week backpacking trip with some friends through the Grand Canyon. I'm grateful that I will, as of right now, be able to go on that trip and enjoy it. I am grateful for flavored water. I do not drink enough water, and flavored seltzer waters like the one I'm holding here in front of me help me to drink more water. That's a silly thing to be grateful for, but I am happy that it exists. And so thanks so much to you, listener, for paying any attention whatsoever to this show. It is so much fun to create. It's a very fulfilling and fun thing to do. So thank you for checking it out. You can reach out to me to say hello or to give me any thoughts you've got on this episode or any others that you may have heard. I am B Ray on Twitter. That's BRHEA. And I will talk to you next week.